So I was in therapy Monday night, and my therapist shocked me when I brought up the most familiar problem that I've had all my life, but she gave me what I think is a new insight into it, or maybe it's an insight I've heard many times before but couldn't hear. What precipitated this was that Monday, an attorney on the floor where I work, I started chatting with him, and I asked him, are we still friends on Facebook? And he said, no, I had to let that go. It was when you made this post about a Chinaman. He said, just even using the word Chinaman, I just can't be Facebook friends with you. So that provoked me, made me think, and it made me sad. Because there's no way that I want that restriction on the language I use. But I don't want to lose so many friends for the language I use. So I didn't argue with him about it. But I went into therapy and I talked about it. And I said, I absolutely will not be bounded, controlled in the language I use by people's sensitivities. And I'm referring to language I use in the public forum like Facebook or on my blog or in a performance. I will definitely control my language in interpersonal reactions, depending on who I'm talking to. But just as I will not be controlled in what I say, I just as passionately and intensely, I hate the consequences of saying what I want to say. I really do not like the consequences. I hate the consequences. So I think my desires are almost equal. My desires to speak out and my desires to maintain my connections. They're about equal. But I don't think my desire to speak out can be controlled. And I've found through life that I can control, but then if I just let it out once, that can just like sever all sorts of connections that I've been working hard to keep. But just like one genuine expression of who I really am, and boom, voila, all those connections are severed. I get great joy out of provoking people. Just love to stir people up, preferably in the most innocuous ways possible. Like try to do it just like, with a kind of an angelic smile and just see something that just on the surface is just so sweet, but there's like this huge jab in it that's not apparent to maybe most people. And I love to just like set that out there, and like maybe a group of 8 people and only like 2 of them get it. And like you see the hook, you see them swallowing the hook, and it's so cool. I just love it. But my therapist says that provoking people is a way of hurting people. And that was the insight. I'd never thought that just because, let's say I say Chinaman, and that provokes people, I'm hurting them. I never thought about that. I think I'm doing a public service. I'm just like showing how ignorant and stupid so many people are by just like setting my little hooks out there and seeing them go ballistic. I'm just like exposing these idiots.
To who?
To the world.
But to who? Nobody's there. The world isn't there.
Oh, the world is there. It's all reading me.
But if you say this to this man, how is that exposing it to the world?
Because I write it on Facebook or on my blog.
To report it.
Yeah, I will say things, and then when people go nuts, like let's say they write in, they comment on my blog or they comment on my Facebook.
So you have a whole system set up. So it's not just this one moment in time.
Yeah.
That would then be disappeared.
Right, but before I had a blog, before I did that, just like when I was a kid, I would ask people about backlacing in rock music lyrics. Is it backlacing? Is that the right term? Where it says, didn't
Paul
you
is dead. We put the record backwards?
Yeah, something about when you play the record backwards and it says satanic verses or things like that. which shows, how wicked rock music is. I grew up in a very religious atmosphere, so a lot of people believed in backlacing of lyrics. And so I just asked them about that, and they'd go off. They'd get excited, and they'd start talking about, how if you play the Beatles' White Album backwards, it says, Satan is king. Or, I just love stirring people up like that, because people just, or ask them about the time of the end, or when Jesus will come back, or, any of their pet things. Like almost everyone has a pet topic that you can just set them off. You can just ask them the most innocent question, and then suddenly they just go off because you've triggered them, and they lose control. And it's so cool to set people off. And
because then you're in control?
Well, I just think how stupid they are.
So is it to embarrass them?
I think it's connected to my rage somehow. Because as I was reading what I was reading earlier, I suddenly got connected to my rage. And then just how stupid so many people are. And their idiotic reactions. And their stupid
So do you
manias.
think it's part of intolerance?
Rage resonates for me. This rage.
So what did your therapist say? Because I kind of got you off track.
She said it was a way of hurting people, and so why didn't I try to bring people joy? Oh, she said, well, what's the payoff to me when I can set people off? Well, I can think they're stupid, and then I feel better about myself, and I think it feeds my grandiosity and my narcissism, and it allows me to dismiss them. Because if I can set someone off with some innocent comment, I think they're an idiot, and I can dismiss them.
So then you won't get hurt?
Well, it kind of clarifies.
So then they can't reject you?
No, I think it just clarifies, okay, this is someone that's not worth putting any effort into. It just it economizes my energy. It's okay, this person's an idiot.
Oh, is that most of the world?
Yeah.
So then where does that leave you?
Leaves me about 1% of the population that I like interacting with.
And is that enough?
Sometimes it is. But I have to be functioning at a really high level and so I can connect with those 1%, enough of the time. But if I'm not functioning at a high level, if I'm not famous and successful, then it sucks. I've had to work a regular job for the first time in 15 years last year. And so I'm dealing with a lot of regular people. I'm not dealing with the 1%. And working as a legal secretary, I don't get to meet my 1%. So I deal with people who get offended by the word Chinaman. And another guy got offended when I gave him a whole lecture on why I can't say Merry Christmas to him. So it feeds my narcissism. My therapist asked me, why would I want to drive people crazy when, as the son of a rhetorician, I hated it when he'd said his barbs into me? He says, my therapist says, you didn't learn from your experience how awful it is when people provoke and use words to manipulate you. You didn't learn compassion from that for other people. You learned to replicate that and to do that to others. And so my therapist said, well, why don't you set yourself the task of creating joy for people? I said, well, there's one girl in particular I want to create joy for, but that was the end of the session. So I don't know how to reconcile this huge part of myself that just wants to set people off.
But I know one of the biggest fears that you've talked about for the character is not being his father.
One of his biggest fears is being his father.
Right.
Yeah.
But wanting not to be. And so if this is behavior...
Yeah, I'm imitating my father.
But if this is directly linked, then what does that mean? Does that motivate him to change? Since he knows what it's like to be humiliated.
Yeah. It's that I'm talking about this and bringing this up because it's obviously on my mind. I'm not content to simply repeat the patterns of my life.
And some of it is benign. Do you think that you have a different set of PC principles than other people do? or are you always clear that the intention is to provoke them and embarrass them?
Well, I'm never offended.
But I mean, do you think part of it is just that you have a different set of values of what words are okay, what words
I
aren't
do.
okay?
Yeah, that is.
And then it also really is different for each individual, depending on who they are, where they come from, what their ethnicity is.
Yeah. I was talking to this girl tonight, and she was saying what a sick sense of humor she has. And obviously I have a very sick sense of humor. And then I was thinking, wow, we're both addicts. This girl is an addict and I'm an addict. Like, I'm wondering, is it possible to have and nurture this sick sense of humor and be a healthy person? Like, I love my sick, perverse sense of humor. I glory in it, I revel in it, I roll around in it. But am I just perpetuating my isolation and social dysfunction and depression and misery and disconnection by reveling in my perverse pleasures, my perverse joys out of provoking people? And can I even stop if I wanted to?
Could you just do it in art?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty much restricted to that. I don't do it in conversation now, very rarely. So yeah, I think I can just, as I've gotten older, I've been able to control it more and more and more.
And what do you mean being able to control it? There was a time when you couldn't control it?
Yeah, like when someone would just lay some big, fat, juicy bait on the table, I just had to like pull that line and wind them up.
And is it now just that you see the consequences that brings you more in control of it?
Yeah, I don't like the consequences.
Or is it being in a 12-step?
I guess both, but the consequences led me to 12-step work. So.
And so, what is happiness for him? What would that look like?
Being with the 1%. Like, there was a time when I was with the elite.
Who is the 1%?
People who make their living writing.
So that's the 1%?
Yeah, that's the 1%.
And regardless of what kind of writing?
Pretty much, as long as it's not lame.
And what isn't, so again, define the terms.
Okay, someone who writes for the LA Times, the New York Times, the New Yorker.
So a journalist?
The Atlantic. Someone at a high level, or a thinker who publishes books that are profound, not academic ease. Someone who writes well and makes a living.
So not bestseller writers?
Well, some bestseller writers write well, and others write crap.
Okay.
So yeah, the 1%.
And where does he put himself?
I belong there, and occasionally I've hung out there, but I miss being there. I miss it really, really much.
So what does it
I don't like being stuck with the Lupin proletariat. It takes making a living from writing.
But what does that take?
It takes something that's deserted me the past 5 years. So it means a certain finger for the zeitgeist for what will bring in money.
So those are two different things, being a good writer and being a financially successful writer.
I think there's a lot of linkage there. Because if you can't make your living from writing, you're stuck doing other work, which takes you away from the writing.
Well, most great novelists are teachers because they can't support themselves, and also because of the publishing industry, and also now newspapers are in the toilet.
Yeah.
So I'm just arguing the other side, just to understand the terms of the character.
I just want to be with people who write for a living, and I want to write for a living.
But that's a career, so would you want to live with them?
I want to hang with them. Those are my people.
Yes.
Like, I don't care if they're left wing. Like,
Do you go to blogger conventions? That's a huge world.
Yeah, I used to do more things like that, but I'd hang out, go to a lot of LA Press Club events. That was my social life for many years. Those are my people. I love to hang with writers. And
so, would you provoke them?
Yeah, I wasn't very popular there.
So then, again, there's another paradox.
Yeah, I really alienated myself from most of them.
Even though you said that's who you identify with.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's some people that can take it?
Yeah, I do have friends who are writers, and friends that I've had for more than a decade. So, and I have friends going back to childhood. So, I guess I have to learn to have as much compassion for other people's spiritual sickness as I have demanded from other people to have for mine.
Say that again?
I guess I have to have the same sort of compassion for other people's sickness, spiritual sickness, that I ask people to have for me.
What do you mean spiritual sickness?
Well, I'm really quick to dismiss people. Like, if they're an idiot, like if they go for the bait and they
But where's the spiritual part of that?
Well, that's... If you're spiritually disconnected, you're more likely to be... to live out of addiction and to be easily triggered. Like someone who's spiritually connected is very difficult to trigger. Like if you've got road rage, you're not working a good program, I heard in a lecture this week. And that really spoke to me because I got a lot of road rage.
Right.
So I thought, wow, I better work my program harder.
So isn't it that you're judging them about whether they do or don't have a spiritual practice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no problem with judging people.
So isn't that the same as provoking?
No, because if I'm judging it, it can just be internal. If I pronounce my judgment, then that can definitely...
But you don't think they
people.
pick it up?
Yeah, but it's still a very different thing from speaking it aloud.
Okay, and then, there's a lot of judgment in terms of what the spiritual principles are about what happens with judgment.
Oh, I have a lot of judgment. I have strong values, and I use them.
No, but there's spiritual beliefs about when you're judging others, and you're also judging yourself, and that the axe comes back on you.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of depression, so...
I
have a lot of rage at other people.
Right, the judgment is
rage at
the
myself.
rage,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
and they're all...
So I'm not particularly gentle with myself, and
right.
not gentle with others. So
right.
maybe if I learn to be gentle with one, it'll help me to be more gentle with the other.
Right, and what would being gentle look like? We'll end there.
Well, it's the opposite of being enraged.
Which would look like what?
Well, currently now when I drive, it's like, that mother...
No, but what would be gentle? What would
it
that
wouldn't
look
be
like?
screaming in my car at people who cut me off in traffic.
What would you be doing?
And wanting to shoot them.
What would you be doing then instead?
I'd be saying that's their own spiritual sickness, and just as I want compassion for mine, I have to have compassion for other people who are, that's a sick person.
And did you say anything to your therapist when she pointed that out?
I said, huh.
Okay.
Yeah, I just found it really interesting that provoking people is a way of hurting people.
Okay. So I don't know if you want feedback.
Yeah, the basics, the normal, what
Okay.
What you'd like
so
to know
what
more
took
about.
You in? What
What
did you want to know more about?
Okay. I am new to your story, so there's a lot of like, what? So I'm fascinated with your character's religious, now spiritual teaching center, why you came to embrace Judaism. Not that I'm very well versed in Judaism, so I'm confused because I want to know where your character finds his spiritual center through the religion or not. Because if he's gravitated to this religion, why? What is it helping him with? Why is there a connection with it? I also heard that he can diss them. That your character can diss somebody very abruptly, but then he doesn't seem to be aware that, or he's upset if the person he disses him back.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy with no, like, what do you mean you're doing this to him or me? I felt that it was like a test for him to be who he is and test the limits, and that he, you know, is kind of the judge and the executioner at the same time, so it feels like there's no relief for him. He's kind of in this abyss of hell that only he can get out of if he wants to, but I don't think he really wants to, because he likes the paradox of the control of the outcome of the misery of the something, if that makes any sense. And the road rage, I felt, you know, where the, you know, where he is spiritually connected to handle that. You know, can that be handled? That's kind of what I think. So I'm still like, what is he about? Because I'm very curious now. There's all these like things that I don't have any inkling of. I don't know how to patch this story together yet because I don't know enough. So I'm fascinated and confused.
Those are really good questions. Great. I mean, it actually is really good when somebody doesn't know anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about your story either. And the story from my childhood that just kept popping into my head was the time my Aunt Gail, who I couldn't stand, and my mother, who I love, were sitting there, and I went, abortion, and they fought for like 3 hours. So I don't think you're the only person who likes to instigate. It was really fun as a little kid. It was so fun because I knew she was anti and she was whatever. So I really, the honesty of what you talked about, I felt a real vulnerability coming from you, and like you're really searching. And I felt this real humility, and then I felt this real, if I might say, kind of an arrogant side. So
that paradox.
Yeah, I kind of, I'm wondering, I'm curious about the whole Jewish thing too. Like, if you were raised in that, and you were, but I guess I really don't. I couldn't tell who you really are. I feel a little scared of you because I don't know if you're a guy trying to care and trying to sort of like be kinder, or if you're a guy who's like, well, screw people, they're 99 cents, bunch of assholes, idiots, fuck them, I don't want to be, you know, it's like I don't know who you are. And whoever you are is totally cool, and I appreciate the honesty, but I got conflicting messages, you know, and I related to a lot of stuff that you said. I've had a lot of rage and a lot of depression and a lot of same kind of shit that you felt. You know, I have thought all that same stuff. And so I related to a lot of stuff that you said. I just kind of didn't get a clear thing of what your real goal is, who you really are and what you really want, kind of thing.
Well, a statement that came to me is, like, I provoke, therefore I am.
Yeah.
And that if your therapist is saying, you know, you're hurting people, like, then what does that do to your identity? And I don't know why I felt a total acceptance and humor in it. Not in a humor in making fun, but like, you know, I like to do this, and I like to poke fun, and sometimes it, you know, bugs people and I get attention for it or whatever, but, you know, it's something I like to do. Some people are provokers. You know, I kind of had this sense, I mean, this is my experience maybe, but I had an acceptance of, you know, saying, he's a provoker, and then I like to hear about the consequences, you know, what the consequences were. And I think your therapist is brilliant. Being a therapist myself, but that could put that together and say, you know, maybe it does hurt, or at the very least trigger people, and really the only problem is that you don't like the consequences of that, but there was kind of a morality about your therapist to think that, you know, like, wow, if you're sometimes, you know, it is that, and also sometimes maybe it's just boring if it's not that way. You know, it's like sometimes things are so mundane if you don't, like, you know, cause a little mischief. Yeah. And and that being provocative, there was a measure of power with that. You know, I could kind of see your dad on the pulpit.
Yeah.
You know, and that, you know, he would provoke, and he would, you know, we have a saying in our our teacher says poke, provoke, confront, and uplift, but like that there's a sequence. You know, if you need to get in there and wake someone up, you can poke around and you can provoke, but then, you know, and you can confront someone that's, you know, but that, you know, the last step is to uplift, you know. So I was fascinated by your story and your vulnerability, and then that whole kind of thing of, you know, I think there's a kind of thing of enjoying the rage. I call it kind of like a emotional addiction, you know, like the high that comes from the road rage, and just like a pattern.
Yeah.
Like I always tell people, you practice that. I think it's like you're practicing depression, you know, like you're practicing how to be unhappy, and so I kind of think that there's something that, you know, gets you off on the rage, and, you know, just to know it, you know, it's like you decide whether you want to continue it or not, but that there's something that you know, there's a charge about it for you, and I just kind of also had this vision of your dad, like, I mean, I just kind of thought he probably like tortured people with it. It's just like, you know, like fire and brimstone, and that there was some kind of electricity, like you were explaining last time. You know, he had this electricity that went on when he would get up there, and you were part of it, and you were his son, and that's something that you'd like to continue. And I just, you know, I mean, I think I was just thinking your therapist was trying to help you take a look at, you know, like the energy, how it could be constructed, and I thought that was really cool.
So I just have two quick last comments. You know, you don't answer it, but just if the character respects someone, is he still able to do that? Or is this always the absence of respect? And does he feel like he was the recipient of intellectual abuse?
Is he still able to do what? Still able to? Does he still provoke people? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
If he respects them?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.